Good morning. Here I am trying to do two things at the same time. I'm setting up a little show for the kids upstairs. I was like, I can do it. I can start right away and it'll be so quiet. And this show starts talking on the iPad. All right, it's done. Hello and welcome. My name is Tara, Christian White homeschool mom, 10 kids, one more on the way. And I'm so excited to talk to you today about tattletaling because, that's a thing that happens in any size family. When it starts happening in a large size family, it's something like I've been highly motivated to deal with right from the beginning, because otherwise nails on a chalkboard, right? Nails on a chalkboard. And I mean, what mom hasn't experienced that overhearing from another room? I certainly have. And it's like, I'm telling mom, like whiny, hot, squeaky kind of injured voice. But sometimes there's an edge of triumphant, sort of a triumphalism to it when they're like, I'm telling mom, like, you're in so much trouble. And I get it. I remember being a kid. I did the same thing. I have two older brothers and a little sister. So I get it. However, when I, first heard it for the first time in my family, I was like, who taught them that? And we homeschool. Our kids don't hang out with a ton of other kids. And it's certainly not something like my husband and I model, right, in our normal speech. So I had a split second to decide the first time this really happened and be like, what am I going to do? Because growing up, like in my family, I don't even really know how or if my parents dealt with it. So all of a sudden it's all on me. And I'm like, okay, there's no way I'm going to encourage this behavior. There's no way I'm going to ignore this behavior. Oh my gosh, what do I do? And then boom, they're literally come running, right? So I had a split second to decide. And what I chose in that moment, I've actually continued to do for years to this day. And I'm so, so glad I have a system. It works really well. And I'm going to share it with you today. So when people say like, hey, Tara, how do you deal with tattletaling? Well, let me back it up for a second, because now we don't have a split second, right? So let's take a little time in this live and share with you a little bit of my thinking that went lightning fast through my mind and still is the bedrock foundation for the technique. So first of all, I recognize when it comes to tattletaling, the heart of it really is actually really good, though the methodology, we're going to move away from the tattletaling, but the heart of it is really seeking justice, because there's been some kind of, crime that's happened in the context of a home, right? Amongst the children and their world, where someone else, like, you stole my toy. That's wrong, right? That's a 10 commandments level theft. So, or whatever it is that the kids have done, very commonplace kind of scenarios that happen in everybody's home. They have in my home. So I might have a bunch of kids, but they're like magically different than other people's children. They're still human beings. So because we're creating the image of God, God is just, right? A God of justice, not an amoral God without any sense of right or wrong, who's just like, well, children, just figure it out. No, God is just. And that's such a comfort to me as an adult to know that, like, nobody gets away with anything. So the most egregious crimes that we think about in the adult world, nobody can run, nobody can hide ultimately from justice, which is a whole other talk about the grace of God, but for the grace of God, we all stand in big trouble because nobody can claim ultimate innocence. But before I get onto that soapbox, let's stay on topic. The kids understand from the youngest age that there is a level of right and wrong, right? There isn't just this, well, to each their own, whatever, I guess you bullied me out of my toy, so I lose. No, they're like, no way. There's right, there's wrong. You should not do that, right? You should ask first. So even if we haven't necessarily taught them explicitly a rule in our home, like ask first before you take someone's toy, which flows right from the 10 Commandments, every human being has this innate sense of ought and should. So I get it when they're like, you crossed the line, buddy. And now I'm going to, do what I have to do to right the wrong. That being said, when they come, screaming to mom, this is not like this tattletaling that just like ratting them out. So they think, I get it. They want to get results. They want justice to be done and get their toy back. Now, that being said, if I encourage that methodology of here's what you do when someone has wronged you, just come running to mom in the heat of your anger, exploding it, yelling it at me. He took my toy and he stuck his tongue out too. Gonna get him in trouble now while I watch. I get it. But if I had encouraged that in the moment, we were going to have major future problems. I know on some level, I'm not like preparing them for adulthood. My vision isn't just the heat of the moment scenario. I'm thinking of the next 20 years. I'm thinking of them raising children one day, right? Or whether they're parents or not. I'm thinking bigger than just the heat of the moment, because I'm setting not only a precedent for like how we're going to deal with it all the children, but I'm preparing them for like adulthood. How are they going to deal with it when someone wrongs them? Are they just going to go running and crying to like whoever? Or am I going to empower to deal with this well, at least insofar as reasonable, right, in and of themselves, so they feel empowered rather than a perpetual victim who has to go screaming to the authority? I'm like, listen, I get it. There's a time and place. This is a limited analogy, but just follow with my thinking here. I also don't want to encourage a power trip, right? Like that gloating I was talking about. You've probably seen it. And they're like, oh, this is going to be so good because I know you were over the line and mom totally has a consequence for example, whatever happened. At the same time, if I totally ignore it, and I'm like, just give your brother his toy for crying out loud. Mommy doesn't want to deal with this right now. Like, mommy's on her phone, right? Oh, I've been there. I've done that. Then that's going to encourage them to take matters into their own hands because the justice has not been dealt with. And I have 7 boys, 3 girls, and all of them will be judge, jury, and executioner so fast. And they have some of them have a hot anger. Some of them have a cold kind of anger that just sort of saves up for another day. Either way, it's going to come out and that's going to break down their relationships and honestly make our home and our family a little taste of hell. So with all this going through my mind, I was like, what do I do? And I still do to this day. So what we do is we deal with it more biblically, even though I don't explain it to the kids like when they're little. This is what we do. We do what's called step 1, step 2. And I'll explain that, but I just want you to know it comes from Matthew 18:15, which is biblical confrontation kind of 101. Real quick, it's these 4 steps that you would take if you believe, Jesus says your brother is sinning, right? If you believe it's biblically defined sin, it's not just like your own sort of arbitrary preferences, but it's really biblically defined 10 commandment level sin. Then there's a 4-step process. Go to them in private, first of all, right? Appealing to them, give them some dignity to kind of like be like, oh yeah, that's a good point. Maybe I'll go the other way, and repent. If they're still, not hearing it, really, committed to continued in this biblically defined sin, bring a witness. Again, the heart is to restore them, right? To right relationship with God, to walking uprightly. It's out of love. It's not out of like, you're in so much trouble. Step 3 would be bring it to the church leadership. And finally, at that point, if they're absolutely determined to continue to walk in this biblically defined sin, treat them like a pagan or a tax collector. So that's a 4-step biblical confrontation found in Matthew 18:15. Not easy to walk out as an adult, but at least we have a prescription. And it certainly doesn't say, step 1, go running to the leader. In this case, in a church context, to be like the elder board or your church leadership board and just be like, guess what I found? Now, I'm not talking about criminal class kind of stuff where like the police should be involved. Obviously, like children or someone's being like abused. That's not confrontation at that point, right? That's criminal class, different class. I think you know what I'm talking about. But in a family, then what do we do? Do the kids just come running to mom and I have to break up every single little conflict? Because listen, maybe with like if you have 2 kids, you're like, I'll just ride this out for a couple of years and it'll kind of blow over. But when you have 3, 4, 5, 10 kids, I'm in this for the long haul, right? Big family mom life. So however we deal with this, it's going to have to work long term. Give the kids justice, but also give mom some peace and some boundaries. So I'm not breaking up every little tiny squabble. It could be mind-bending. So I developed step 1, step 2 from Matthew 18:15. And here's what you do. I call it step 1. And I'll say, did you do step 1? Let me teach them this, right? So then when they know what I mean by step 1, it's this. Did you go to your brother calmly, quietly, in private basically, and say, mommy and daddy said, no taking other people's things. Insert the rule. Will you obey? That's the script that we teach them. Daddy and mommy said, insert rule, will you obey? Now that puts the other person now on the spot, right? It's answer the question, right? And they're like, okay, am I going to obey mom and dad? Or am I going to face the consequences of actively choosing to continue disobeying mom and dad? So it relieves the child, right, the one who's coming to confront, from saying, You obey me, which they actually have no authority to command their sibling, but the parents sure as sugar do, right? It's appropriate authority. It's an appropriate rule. This is, they know what we're talking about. It gives them a script, gives them a fallback, gives them a chance to calm down. Their justice will be done, because if the child just looks at them as like, watch me, or they pretend, oh, I didn't hear you kind of thing, because that happens, then step 2, now you can come to mom more calmly, not screaming your head off like a fire engine, and say, Mom, I did step 1. Here's the scenario. So-and-so is like ignoring me or whatever. And then I can call in the other person and say, and they're both there in front of me, and say, okay, what happened, right? And then I do my investigation like a fair judge in the context of the jurisdiction of the home, and we solve the problem. And I might say, oh, they actually didn't actually hear you. So go ahead, do step 1 again, right? And then we resolve it that way. Or then we identify, no, this person is completely willfully, knowingly disobeying mom and dad, and I'll deal with whatever the infraction is appropriately. And it restores peace to our home very quickly, but it empowers, right, the offended one to have a sense of justice, not have to like be a victim, take no triumphant, because I will not, I actually might even deal with that separately, right? Because we shouldn't take pleasure in other people's downfall, not even our own sibling in our own home. So it kind of covers everything. Step 1, step 2, I teach it from the youngest age. I'd probably say by about 4, they have the language ability. Before that, I'm just going to deal with it, because they don't have the mental development, in my understanding, to do step 1, step 2. So I just like deal with it. I'm like, no, honey, that's when you're just teaching them the rules. No taking toys, right? Give back the toy, right? There you go. That's how we teach it then. So listen, this strategy has been such a game changer in our family. I use it probably every day, if not every other day. And I also see it as a generational game changer. We're first generation Christians in our family, both my husband and I, and we're overcoming a lot of struggles like any parents by God's grace, but also learning on our feet because we didn't grow up in a Christian context. So if you are someone that would really appreciate encouragement from big family moms struggle overcoming it, especially from a Christian perspective with a lot of grace, then I'd invite you, if you're catching this, on my own personal profile page or someone shared it with you, feel free to kind of come on over to the big family moms struggling. I'm having a brain fart moment because I'm pregnant. I wrote it down. Big family moms overcoming struggles and growing in grace. That's a Facebook group that I have the privilege of running, and I just want to know it's available to you. And if you're already in the group, because you're catching this in the group, please feel free to share this with other moms in your life, 3+ kids, but not exclusively, so that they can be encouraged too with the practical stuff, and a community of women who want to grow in God's grace and overcome the struggles common to moms, especially big family moms. I didn't have a mom mentor growing up or some like other mom friends. Motherhood can be really isolating. And with many kids, it can be like a long road of isolating because you're not just kind of hanging in there for a couple of years till the kids are off to school, especially if you're homeschooling. So now that I've got almost 11 kids, I am so grateful that I have an ability to connect in with other moms and to actually be a mentor that I wish I'd had in the early years. My heart is to serve other moms with 3+ kids in a gracious, authentic way, the way I would have appreciated it. I'm still human, so eat the chicken, spit at the bones. By no means do you have to agree with everything I say, but I want you to know this is who I am. This is what I'm here for. It's so much easier to walk the road of life, especially as a big family mom, with support. So thank you for joining the group. Thank you for sharing the group. And I'm looking forward to seeing you on Wednesday, where we're going to talk about another one of my favorite topics, whining. So God bless you. Have a great day. I'll see you then.